There's a old adage that when you need to get something done, ask a busy person to do it. And I don't know of anybody who's as consistently busy as Doreen is. If she's not traveling to see her family at different parts of the world, or running organizations, helping with her busy practice, or involved in her busy practice, she's just amazing. But when I asked or invited Doreen to participate in her speaker series, she wrote me back, sure. And that's just so wonderful. So Doreen is one of the, I guess, most intelligent, smartest, nicest people that I know. She's so busy. She's such a pioneer, doing so many things. I presume if you're on, you've read the biographies that we sent out, the bios that we sent out. And I just have to tell you that it's just such an honor to be able to introduce Doreen and to give her the floor and let her talk on subjects that she knows dear and dear to us. Thank you, Doreen.
Hi, everybody. So Elliot asked me to speak tonight about family law and how it's evolved. But family law includes, for me anyway, a very wide program. It's not only, when you think of family law, everybody says, oh, it's divorce. Well, that's part of my practice. And then I do what I call the good part, the happy part, when I do an adoption, because there I'm helping to build families. And, I started law school after I was married and I had 3 kids. I just want to tell you a little bit about why I went into law school. When I finished my undergrad, I was married and I had 3 kids, and I wanted to do a master's in political science. And my mother-in-law was very sweet. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman, said, what are you going to do with a master's degree, dear? Why don't you go into law school? And well, you know what? I listened. And I applied to law school and I went there. And I have to tell you, it was like 3 years of nightmare, maybe more for my kids, because of the studying. I did it in French. And, but I persevered, and I thank God I had Gerald was just amazing. I had his encouragement the whole time. He used to say, go downstairs and study, go downstairs and study. And he was always there helping with the kids. And so I don't think I could have done it without him. So I have to say thank you to my husband. And he's always encouraged me. Gerald is the type of person that no matter what I did, if I succeeded, he was very proud. And he still encourages me even today. So, I recently, last week or 2 weeks ago, I received a very big honor from the Bar of Québec. I became an Avocate Émérite. And he started to cry, he was just so, he's just happy, so it made my life much easier. So when I finished law school and I finished bar school, and I still had these 3 kids growing up, they were young. So I started to work with Gerald and his associates in our office. And I guess maybe because I was a woman and I never loved business, or I never thought I had a passion for it, I decided to do family law. And at the time, family law was divorce. And divorce is a federal jurisdiction. The Divorce Act applies all across Canada, although the way we proceed might be a little different in each province. It's not fun. It's very difficult. It's very emotional. You're really helping people break families. But the Divorce Act has evolved. And as a matter of fact, we've just had several changes once again. When I first started practicing, well, you had to wait 3 years, you had to wait 5 years to get divorced. There had to be different reasons. It was much more difficult to get to a settlement. Wasn't easy. The court didn't always push you to try to settle the outstanding issues. And really, the ones that really suffer, of course, are the children. And, I learned something along the way. There was a judge, Victor Melançon, who has since passed away. He was just a wonderful person. And he had a daughter that went on some mission in Africa, and on her way home stopped in Vancouver to see her sister. And she decided to come back to Montreal the safest way. How was the safest way? You take a train. Well, unfortunately, there was a bad train crash and this young woman died. And after that, every time he heard a divorce, he said, you don't have to love each other anymore, and you don't have to live together anymore. But you have 3 children or 2 children, and there will always be a tie between you. There will always be a bond. And if you're not smart, they're the ones that are going to suffer. And I say the same thing to my clients. I really thought that was really wonderful, because sometimes there is so much anger that the couple, they don't see the forest for the trees. So, as you go along and you try to get your clients to settle, well, in the 80s and 90s, in the beginning of 2000, we didn't have the same services that we have today. So there was no such thing as a divorce mediator. What is a family law mediator? What do they do? If I can't do it and my therapist can't help me, what is a mediator going to do? Well, now the law says you must go to at least one session of mediation. And what does that mean? A mediator is a person who is neutral, doesn't have to be a lawyer, could be a social worker, could be a psychologist, could be a lawyer, could be a notary, could be a psychiatrist. They have to take the family mediation course. They have to do all the training, which takes a while. And a divorce mediator is a neutral person. So if you have children, you're entitled to 5 free sessions. If you don't have children, you're supposed to share in the cost. What does a mediator do? He's not there to tell you what to do. He's there to listen to you and to listen to what you have, what your needs are, and he could help you come to some kind of an agreement. And once you come to this agreement, you then take it to your lawyer. Most of the time, the parties each have their own attorney. And if the attorneys are in agreement with what you have signed, and I hesitate because sometimes the attorneys can mess up the agreement that the parties have come to along with the mediator, then it becomes much easier to settle. The mediator can help you with your custody issue, with your parenting time. We no longer use the term custody and access. We use parental authority and parenting time. I still have a hard time using that word, but anyway, the parenting time, because that's new. And they can help you divide the assets and the child support and the spousal support. So if you come to an agreement, if you're willing to settle, there is no reason why you can't. And that very often works. But let's say it doesn't work. What do? A divorce could take, if you have a contested divorce, it could take 3 years, 4 years, sometimes 5 or 6 years. I had one that took 10 years. And most of that was my client's fault because he was just never around. But I would say that it takes a good 3 years to get it, to finally be heard, and then you have to wait for judgment. So that could take another 6 months. And it's very frustrating, and it could be extremely costly. If you're going to present applications to the court for child support and for more spousal support and to get me a car or do something else, each time you go to court, the anger is just fueled and nobody benefits. And the kids are the ones that suffer, because whether you don't involve the children or not, if you do or don't involve the children, they know that there is this emotional stress going on. So what else do we have in an attempt to settle? We have what's called a CRA, a Conférence de Règlement à l'Amiable. It's a settlement conference. But to go to a settlement conference, everybody has to agree. And a settlement conference is a day that is set. You choose dates and the court will find a judge or a retired judge to hear you. We go to the courthouse. It's not in a courtroom. And we sit around a table and the judge sits at the head of the table. And it's not the lawyers that speak. It's the parties that speak. So the plaintiff will tell the story, and then the other party, if it's the wife, she starts. If it's the husband, he could start. And then we break into caucus rooms and we go out, and then the judge sits with one side and then he comes into the caucus room. And this goes back and forth, back and forth. And I have to say that I think about at least 85% of the time, they could come to a settlement. Everybody has to put a little bit of water in the wine. I actually had one a few years ago where the settlement conference took 3 days. And it's the first time that I heard of a judge agreeing to sit for 3 days to settle a file. Well, we did. We ended up settling. And I thought that was a huge success. And a lot of it had to do with the judge. And I did one very recently where my client was actually the defendant. I represented the wife. And the judge says, yeah, but she's really the one asking. So I'm going to have her tell her side of the story first. So she started with her story. She told it. And then normally the judge listens to the other side. And he said, Maitre Brown, I want you and your client to leave the room, go into the caucus room. Then the judge came out and asked me to come back in, not my client. I mean, this to me was a first of all, and I've been doing this for several years. And I could see that my client's husband was not happy. And he turned around and he said to the guy, I want you to know, I heard your wife, and I think she's very credible. And if we can't come to an agreement today and she's going to go to court, she's going to get more than she's willing to settle for. Anyhow, we ended up settling. He wasn't happy, but we reduced our demand and he increased his demand. Everybody went home. We signed an agreement. We drafted it. We signed it. We found a judge to hear us, because the judge who hears a settlement conference cannot hear the divorce itself. So if you don't settle during this settlement conference, you're back on the roll, and we're back to all the steps that we have to take to get heard by a judge eventually. And that's really a big bonus with the settlement conference. If you don't go to the settlement conference and we go along with the divorce, very often we come to agreements anyhow. So I just finished one, and we signed the agreement, and we filed everything into court. And especially with COVID, nobody wants to go into the courthouse. It still takes several months for the judge to just sign the judgment, because we write the judgment ourselves if we have an agreement. But they're very short on staff because of COVID. Christmas holidays come, they're again working at half staff. So even if you have a file where everything has been settled, you file your agreement with the judgment, you file your draft judgment, everything is done, you have to wait. And it could take 3 months, 4. I just had one, I think it took 7 months until the judge finally signed it. As I said, you have to go to one session of mediation. Now, what happens if you're a Jewish couple? What happens if you're a religious Jewish couple? You need a get. The ultra-Orthodox, the Hasidim, are not permitted to institute a civil divorce unless they get the get. This is with what I have been told by several of my clients, and I do a lot of divorce in the Orthodox community. What do you do if one side doesn't want to give you the get? I had a file many years ago where this woman came to see me. She had had many children. She wasn't living with her husband, and he was not going to give her a get, no matter what. Well, we have Article 21.1 in the Divorce Act, which says that you must remove the barriers to a religious remarriage. So it doesn't apply only to Jews, it applies to Muslims as well, and I'm sure to other religions. If we ask for the get and the other side, the husband does not give the get, the 21.1 says the court can refuse to hear you. Doesn't say has to refuse to hear you. That is totally discretionary. And what I did with this file, she got permission to institute the divorce proceedings in civil court. And when we had an interim order, she was living in a tiny apartment with, I think, 6 of the 9 children, and he was living in the house. Well, on an interim order, I was able to get half ownership of the house. I was able to get her name put onto the house. The judge threw him out of the house, and she moved back in. When we finally came to the final divorce hearing, he's there, he's showing up, and he wants to talk. And the judge said, "Sir, you have not given her the get?" And he said, "No, I can't, because if I give her the get, I can't remarry her." Okay, judge said, "I will not hear you." And we were successful, and because I wasn't getting any money out of this guy, but we were able to get the entire house. And so she's still in this house. And several years later, through other means, he granted her the get. And I remember it was Erev Pesach, it was just before the first Seder. I was in Vancouver with Gerald, and I get a call from my client telling me he's giving me the get. So, you know, you can't use force. A person has to, the man has to give the get. You can't use force to force him to give you the get. It has happened, and not with very good results. There are rabbis that have now drafted a halachic get, which the couples sign before they get married, and saying, "I will give you a get if, God forbid, it doesn't work out." Now, I know that many of my very Orthodox clients say you cannot do that, because one of the first questions you are asked when you go for a get is, "Are you here of your own free will?" And if you turn around and say, "Well, not really, I'm here because," they're not going to give you the get. And I think that our esteemed Rabbi Carlbach will, I think will back me up on that. You must be there of your own free will. But what happens if the woman refuses to attend the best din for the get? And what happens if she says, "No, I'm not accepting the get"? I was successful in a file of having her proceedings thrown out of court because she would not accept the get. And then there are other ways by getting, I don't remember how many rabbis together to enable the man to have a get. But what is interesting, I did attend a get a couple of times, and at the end, when it's over, the rabbi said to my client, "Well, you could get married right away," and returns to the woman and says, "You have to wait 90 days. Anyhow, I kind of have a bit of a problem with that, but so be it. So we have the Jewish women have a protection under 21(1) of the Divorce Act, as I said, but again, that is discretionary on the part of the court. Just let me see. So it really does pay for people to try to settle all outstanding issues when they're getting a divorce. And hopefully, and I see this very often also, that hopefully after a while, the anger sort of dies down and everybody sort of gets on with their lives. What about support? How do you prove what you need? How do you prove what you think you're entitled to? How often do you see or hear? I'm sure we all saw this movie. Oh, can't remember the name, but I'm sure my friend Saul Zuckerman remembers the name of this couple getting a divorce. They were killing each other almost. And our courts have the discretion very often in deciding if a woman is entitled to a lump sum, if she's entitled to compensation. Compensation for what? Compensatory allowance is something that is given to a spouse for things that he or she, usually the woman, has done during the marriage, and she was not compensated for it. She was not paid for her services. That includes a woman who stays home and raises the children, because that is a service that enabled the husband to build his business, to become rich, and she stayed at home and was impoverished because as she's older, no one is going to hire her. She's not going to go back to school when she's 45 or 50 years old to start. No, so she will never make it to that level. But that is discretionary on the part of the court. And very often the court does give the wife compensation. The child support, we have child support tables that unfortunately are very low as far as I'm concerned. The children, very often it's the wife that will have custody, but more and more we have shared custody or shared parental authority or shared parenting time now as of last March. What if the children want to have their own lawyer? It's possible for children, once they reach a certain age, you could have a lawyer appointed for a child at the age of 9 or 10, depending on the child. And a child's lawyer comes to court and tells the court what his client wants, not necessarily bringing the child to court to testify. We don't want that. We're trying to save the kids. You don't want the children to have to come to court. They're much more comfortable if they have their own lawyer, and therefore they are duly represented. And I did this a few times. I've done it several times. And once the judge said to me, well, Maitre Brown, I know this is what your client wants, but what do you think? And I'm not allowed to tell the court that. When a lawyer is hired for a child, they cannot give his or her own opinion. It is only the opinion of his or her client, and that the client is the child. More and more today, the parenting time, or as I'm used to calling it, access or custody, is shared. Could be on a weekly basis. It could be different scenarios of 2-2-3-3, all different. I prefer, if there's going to be shared custody, I prefer, me personally, that it be a week, because the kids, if you're breaking it up during the week, the kids don't even know where they're going to sleep. So there's always, when it gets very bitter, we get psychosocial expertise. So, all of this takes time, all of this costs money, and all of this has huge emotional wear and tear on the couple, but mostly on the children. So as a lawyer, we have an obligation to try to get our clients to settle or to tell them about all the mediation that is available to them, to tell them what else is available to them for settlement conferences and or going to mediation. So it's very emotional, even for lawyers sometimes, to constantly deal with this type of work. And in a way, you're helping break up a family. So the other part of my practice, which is the better part, I call it, is my adoptions. I started doing adoptions just a few years after I started practicing. And in 1984, I started working with women who agreed to carry a child for a couple who could not have children. And for whatever unknown reason, it appears to me anyway, and I believe that science shows that too, that there is more infertility in young couples. And I've been doing this, as I said, since 1984, and I love it because to me, I'm building a family, I'm making everybody happy. And even that has evolved to a huge extent because in 1984, we were dealing with straight insemination. I never had a problem. In Quebec, it has never been illegal, but the contract, even today, the law is changing imminently because the new law is finally coming out, some parts of it good, some not so good. It says that the contract is null and void. Now, there were some judges that felt that this was illegal. I was always very successful. And in 2009, there was a judgment that came down, not my client, and the judge refused to do the adoption because in Quebec, you have to, the wife of the couple has to adopt her husband's child. And the judge refused the adoption, saying this is illegal, the consent is vitiated, it was planned. So I was the first case after that judgment, and I had a same-sex couple, actually, working with a woman from California, and they were having twins. And because it was such high risk, they brought the surrogates to Montreal with her mother and the children and put them up in an apartment. And then we proceeded with the adoption, where the non-genetic father was adopting the children of the genetic father. And the judge says, well, surely you heard of this judgment. And I said, absolutely. So we set another date to plead, and we were very successful. So what did we have at that time? You ended up with contradictory judgments of the same court, same level. I continued. I was successful all along. Comes 2012, I come before a judge and she refuses the adoption, basing it on exactly the same reasons as this Juge Dubois had done. The only problem with that case is I had worked with the same couple and the same surrogate 2 years before, and everything went fine. So we had a brother and sister with two different mothers. We went to the Court of Appeal. I finally convinced half an hour before my delays expired. My clients finally said, yes, go ahead. We had the Attorney General present. We had a lawyer named for the child, and we proceeded and we pleaded for an entire morning and we won. So now everything was clear, was go ahead, because the Court of Appeal ruled that this is not illegal. You could go ahead and do and work that way. And after that, it's unbelievable that there were so many judges that did not even know that I was able to pass, to do this and to have the children adopted before the Court of Appeal. And I remember coming before a judge on the South Shore, and she said to my clients, I'm very happy to grant your adoption. It was two men, and it was the non-genetic dad who was adopting. But I want you to know that before, at the time it was 2016, before 2015, I would not be allowed to do this. Well, I didn't want to tell her that I've been doing it since 1984. Anyhow, she granted it. And then one day I had to go. I'm just telling you these stories because to tell you how it depends on who's sitting on the bench. Bottom line, I had to drive 2.5 hours to do a divorce of triplets, to do an adoption for triplets. And it was 2 men, and they had hired a surrogate in Mexico, and they had triplets. So I said to these guys, I said, that's where this Juge Dubois sits. I'm not coming to that courthouse until I get my judgment in the Court of Appeal. And I go there, and everything is great, and everything is fine. But I'm nervous, and I said, I don't know the judge, and I'm the stranger. They look at you when you come from the big city and you're in a little courthouse, they kind of look at you funny. And I had my client, I trained him. These are the questions, and this is what you're going to answer. And that morning in the courthouse, in the halls, I'm going over it. I go into the courtroom for the calling of the roll, and the judge says to me, Maitre Brown, I have a question for you. He said, yes. He says, are these children Canadian? I said, yes. Okay, judgment granted. I said, excuse me. I drove here 2.5 hours. My clients are sitting in the hall waiting to come in. I said, can I at least bring them in to have you say judgment granted with them present? So, you're dealing when you're dealing with an adoption, you're dealing with everybody that is happy. And I always say this, and I said this even this morning when I finished. I said to the judge, this is happy court. It's like a real pleasure to be there. The new law is coming into effect imminently. I will no longer have to do the adoptions. It will be done by straight administrative process where the names of the genetic parents go on the birth certificate right away. And they really don't even have to, not both of them don't have to be the genetic parents. So it makes it much easier, much more pleasant, because truthfully, people wrongly think that Quebec is not, it's not easy to deal with Quebec. And in many respects, it is not when it comes to adoption. When I was doing international adoptions, we had to deal with our Secretariat of International Adoption. And even to this day, they are impossible. I could tell you a story that I have a client who's from the Ivory Coast. They're Canadian citizens. They work here. The baby, their niece was born. The father died. My client's brother died. The mother was not interested. They went back to the Ivory Coast, did not know they had to work with our Secretariat of International Adoption. They got an adoption done there, heard by the court, everything totally above board, legit. They cannot bring the child into Canada. She's 3 years old. She's living with another uncle who is too old, can't look after her. And I don't know, I'm going to try to get our courts to recognize that adoption that took place. But the Secretariat of International Adoption said, sorry, you didn't deal with us when you were supposed to, and we will not grant you the permission. We will not issue a letter of non-objection. And therefore, our hands are tied. And I'm just in the process of preparing these documents and to try to get to the court. I have to plead the Director of Youth Protection, and are they going to, put up a barrier? In my mind, when our law says that you have to work in the best interest of a child, well, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. But having said that, I just have to say that I love being a lawyer. I love trying to help people, and I don't always succeed. But it is really heartwarming for me to be able to do whatever I can and to help my clients, be it for a divorce or be it for an adoption or a surrogacy. It is, I think it's probably one of the best professions that one can ask for, be it a man or a woman. It's really is great. So that's my story. And that's it.
Thank you, Doreen. We'll thank you properly in a few moments, but does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask of Doreen? I would ask you to unmute yourselves and just fire away.
No questions.
No questions.
Hi, Doreen. It's Connie Eisenberg.
Hi.
I have a personal question because I was surprised to hear about the adoption necessary for the other parent in a same-sex couple, for example, where the child is
Only in
genetically
Quebec.
related to one. Oh, okay. I was going to ask that because my son just had a daughter in October, and there was no question of adoption.
No,
So-
where does he live?
Ontario.
Ontario is the easy. No, British Columbia is the easiest. But in Ontario, you could have 4 parents. In British Columbia, you could have 6 parents. Quebec, you could only have 2 parents. And a lot of people are against that. A lot of people feel that the child should be entitled to have multiple parents. I personally don't think so. I think it is hard enough for 2 people to raise children. If you're going to start with 4 parents or 6 parents, could make it doubly and triply more difficult. But no, that's Quebec. But with our new law, we will not have to, it's going to become somewhat similar, that part of the process anyway, will be somewhat similar to Ontario. That's called the administrative process, where their names go on a birth certificate right away.
Thanks for that.
Hi, can I ask a question, please, Doreen?
Sure.
Yeah, I liked your talk, by the way. I don't know if you've ever run into situations like this, because usually, the victim is a woman. The woman is the person.
Not always.
But this case of a friend of mine, it's maybe 20 years ago, but he was making $10,000 a year, and his wife was a doctor. And, they were divorced, and the court didn't say, well, he's dependent on her, so we'll give him an, pension alimentaire. I mean, they didn't see it that way. He was a man and she was a woman, so.
Yeah, but today
Is it different today?
when I said that the life has evolved, yes, it has evolved. And there are many times that a woman would have to pay spousal support to a man, not as often as the other way around, but or not as much perhaps as the other way around. But yeah, a woman would have to pay for her husband. Absolutely. It doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen that often, but it does absolutely happen. And by the same token, if depends who has more money and the kind of life he has led, living with a very wealthy woman. At the end, she might very well have to give him a lump sum or compensation. If he was we hear a lot today about house husbands that stay home and look after the kids, and the wife goes out and works and makes the money. Same thing.
Thank you.
You want another question?
Some additional questions?
Yeah, another question. Do you think religious belief helps people to avoid these divorces and these fights? And, I mean, sometimes there are serious reasons for a divorce, but sometimes they get stupid. And do you think religion plays a role?
In what way? You mean to keep the couple together?
For example.
Sometimes, but I have to tell you that in the Orthodox community, I'm doing more and more divorces. And they might not go to the same extent in fighting, because they usually have a get, and that is very often decided and worked out with their dayans and the dayanim, and that kind of settles a lot of issues. But there are more and more divorces even in that community. And I'll go further to say that there are many that should be divorced or should not have gotten married. And they did. So like any other couple.
Additional questions?
Hi, Doreen. I just want to ask
Yes.
you a question. My wife says I should identify myself, but my name is there anyway, Saul Zuckerman. But
It says Saul and
I-
Anna.
yeah, Saul and Anna.
there I
I
am.
put down Saul and Anna, but Saul is talking.
That's-
I know a lot of Orthodox communities, and there's no question that the percentage, even though you're getting a lot, the percentage of divorces in the
Is
ultra
less.
Orthodox and Orthodox community is way less than in the non-Orthodox or the Reformed
Yes.
community or conservative community. And that is a problem. But one of the reasons they don't is because they don't have the same look. In a young couple who get married and 2 years later they start fighting, they can't stand it, they get a divorce. A lot of them don't care about trying to settle it the way you're saying with mediation. They get angry. If they have money, it's even easier because they can split up. But at the end of the day, a lot of couples do solve their problems and don't get a divorce for flimsy reasons in the ultra-Orthodox community.
And sometimes they stay together and should
Yes.
not stay together. But I didn't know
100%.
100%. There's a lot fewer divorces percentage wise.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that when I started practicing, you didn't hear of any Hasidic divorce, any ultra Orthodox divorce. Today, it is happening.
Doreen,
happens more.
Doreen, could I add something? When I was young, which was a few years before you, not much, in the 40s, nobody got divorced. I did not know one single couple until a couple on our street. Out of 120 apartments or on Dollard in Outremont, there was the first couple who got divorced, I think, in 52. That was amazing. We said divorce. What was divorce?
You know how hard it was to get a divorce in those days?
I know
You had to
that- I
hire
know.
detectives and you had to follow them. And
I know, but I'm saying people were also, even the non-Orthodox, were more used to staying together. Part of it was
Absolutely.
people didn't have money, but the other part was people didn't get divorced. Today, divorce, I get angry at you, I get a divorce. That's
Well,
it.
but maybe some of those people should have been divorced, and maybe
Yeah,
that would
well,
have showed
that's-
that there would have been a lower divorce rate
No,
today.
no question they should have, but at the end of the day, today, divorce happens too often.
Well, yeah, it's very easy to get a divorce.
Yeah, and by the way, you forgot to say, if a guy's wife is earning $1 million a year and he's earning 50,000 a year, he certainly can go to court and get the money.
Absolutely. I said that. I didn't
Yeah.
forget. I said that. Absolutely. And I'll go further. I said that today. I'm in the process of preparing a prenup, a marriage contract for somebody. And I said, you know, I could protect you up to a certain extent. I said, but if you get married and then you get divorced 20 years later and your wife is going to come to court, you're going to be worth $40 million. That's all your money because you have a marriage contract and she doesn't have it. I said, be sure she's going to get a good $10 million to continue the lifestyle that she had. I said, it's called equality today.
Yeah, but the
And
one thing you didn't talk about is like what happened with the Cirque du Soleil. When someone lives in common law.
You're
which-
right.
Wait, let me finish. Common law, which affects a huge percentage of the population today in Quebec. People are living together, not married. They are not protected the way someone
You're
who's
right.
married is.
You're absolutely right. I did forget to say that, so I will
Thank you.
say it
I
now.
reminded you. It's okay.
Common law is recognized most of the states and all over Canada. In Quebec, we have the highest rate of common law of any other province in Canada, and we do not recognize common law marriages. You could be together for 25 years and you get zip if you are not married, or you could, if you could show unjust enrichment that you contributed money to the purchase of this fabulous building, this shopping mall or whatever, then you're entitled. But you've got it. You're really
but
behind the eight
Guy
ball. But that's
Liberté-
changing, so.
Guy Liberté, I
Liberté,
know, but
the
Guy
lower
Liberté paid his common law wife nothing. He really gave.
Nothing, but she got over 50,000 a month for the kids.
Yeah, but that's because of Herbie Black, who gave her money to sue him.
well, for whatever reason, it did go up to the Supreme Court of Canada. Our law is going to be changed. And there are a couple of judges that are thinking outside of the courts now, and they have given something, certainly not what she should be getting. But, you know, it's very interesting that we have the highest rate of common law marriages anywhere in Canada.
When are they going to change the law, Doreen? Do you know, or talking?
It's coming. It's coming. No, it's coming.
Yeah, Pesach is coming too.
Yeah, I know, but it's coming.
Okay.
So,
Bernie,
and
would
as
you
far
like,
as children are concerned, I see there is a question. The children, there's no such thing as an illegitimate child anymore. Okay, so although the spouse is not entitled to claim spousal support or to share in his assets, the children will not be punished. The children will get, and in the Guy La Liberté case, that's exactly that. The kids got what they were used to, how the style they were used to living. So the kids were protected. The children will be protected. Gone are the days that they were illegitimate, out of wedlock children.
thank you. Bernard Ornstein, you had a question?
That was his question,
Okay.
unless he has another one.
No, my question had to do with the, in a Jewish divorce situation, have the parents ever been in a situation where they each demand that the children be brought up in, so shall we say, two different religious affiliations, say conservative versus Reconstructionist or something of that nature, where the court or the judge would have to decide such a weighty issue?
No, the ones that I have seen with the Orthodox, it could be the children are going to be brought up skver. No, I want the children to be brought up satmar. So there, and it could pose a big problem. I had exactly that problem. It is surfaced now because she doesn't want she was putting the kids in a different school, and the agreement said they're going to be brought up satmar. So what will happen, I don't know.
So still a work in progress.
Still a work in progress. I'm going to go further. This better be settled, because you go to before a French Canadian judge that doesn't understand, that thinks that if it's a bagel, it's kosher food. They don't understand a lot of it. So go explain skver or vishnitzer with satmar or bells. Go explain that to them. Good luck.
Connie, you had a question?
Yeah, comment and question maybe. I was just thinking, I don't know, Doreen, I came in like 2 minutes late. If you talked about therapy even before mediation, before getting to a lawyer, because I find in my practice, I mean, I'm a psychologist, psychoanalyst, and marriage and family therapist. It's not that unusual. So this addresses people who are saying that it's too easy to get divorced. In my practice anyway, it's not that unusual for people to come in ready to get divorced, but sort of giving it a last chance and ending up not getting divorced.
I don't see those people. You see them.
I see those people.
By the time they come to me,
it's like finished.
Yeah, I try. I have to admit, I do ask them if there's no possibility, if they will go to marriage counseling. By the time they come to a lawyer, they want out.
Yeah. I just want to say one other thing, having gone through a get process. As a woman going through a get in Montreal, it is the most dehumanizing, misogynistic, like there's not anything neutral that can be said. Forget positive, you can't say anything neutral about that process from the perspective of a woman. And it's striking to me that time goes on, certain things change, but the archaic nature of that process has not changed at all and remains absolutely horrific. And I guess the legal system, this is sort of my question, can have no impact on a process that's completely religious.
No, no, the court stays away from that. We don't have that jurisdiction. The court is not even there to order the husband to get a get. It did come, there was a file that I had been involved in many years ago, but I represented one of the children, where the husband had signed an agreement at one point that he would give a get and then back down. And the court did order him to do it, not because they were asking for the get, but because he had signed a contract. And there was also a contractual thing, but that's not going to change the degrading part of the get process itself. You know, you're the woman, and, you know, I have assisted once or twice, you know, at the process. And I understand what you're saying. But our courts will not get involved. They can't. It's not their jurisdiction.
I just want to say thank you, Doreen. It was a really wonderful talk.
Thank you.
Doreen, thank you. It was absolutely great.
I'd like to,
Are you calling me
call
tomorrow
upon-
morning?
I'm going to call you tomorrow morning, but I might call you in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Rabbi, are you there?
I'm here.
So,
I'm
Rabbi, what do
asked-
you say about the get?
Well, I'm asked
Hey,
to
hey.
thank you. I'm asked to thank you, which is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Not
You know,
about the get.
everyone, it's obvious that we are in the presence of a very, shall we say, passionate individual. She is so dedicated to her marriage, to her Jerry, to her family, to her grandchildren,
All 10 of them.
to all 10 of them, even to her brother, to the dedication that you always see from Doreen. And it's extended to the community, to our community. We're so privileged. You know, I've always marveled at you as a couple. Whenever you were attending our Shabbatons, we go way back to the 80s. And it's just an incredible, you're an incredible person. And it's not just you have what's called passion, you also have now obviously compassion. It's not only using your skill when it comes to, you know, standing in court and representing the people who you are, but also the heart that you put into it. And how many people that I know you've helped, whenever you can, you will do your utmost. And that's the kind of person you are. So a lot of bracha to you in your work, a lot of nachas to you from your family. And I just want to say one more thing. I want to talk about the whole idea of law without getting into any detail of law. In Hebrew, you know, the word that's used to describe something in Hebrew can sometimes, by changing the vowels of those very same letters, you find another word. And the rabbis marvel because they actually say that there's a connection between these two meanings. So the word halacha means law in Hebrew, halacha. But this word halacha can also be pronounced as holech. Holech means to progress, to go further. You see, in Torah, when one establishes what should be the law, they're actually progressing. And in your case, Doreen, you're representing somebody in law to help them progress as well in the dilemma that they are experiencing at that moment. So definitely, it's a very important mitzvah to help people, but to help people in this way in halacha. So I want to give you again, Hashem should continue to give you the wisdom. Hashem should continue to always give you the abilities to help people in this area of halacha, in this area of law, and the area of progression. By the way, it's
Amen.
great to see.
Amen.
Great
Amen.
to see everybody, and thank you to Elliot for giving me this privilege to thank you.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Doreen, thank you very, very much. Been
Thank
absolute
you.
pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Doreen,
Night,
most
everyone.
enlightening.
Have a good night.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again tomorrow night, Doreen, eh?
What's tomorrow night?
No, you're giving another one. We want to
Oh.
hear you again.
Bye, guys.
I'll talk to you
Okay,
later.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.